Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master and welcome to my channel. Well, I just got done reviewing a whole bunch of Star Wars games last week. Let's see if there's any other type of game can I review. Why don't we take a look at a recent Star Trek game? Star Trek the video game for the PC based on the J.J. Abrams reboot of the franchise. Well, I don't think this game is as bad as a lot of people say it is. It certainly isn't a $60 game by any means, but I think I got my money out of it, seeing how I bought this game around $4 on a Steam sale. So when I bought it, I did so out of curiosity to see if it was bad as they said it was. Well, it's not quite as bad as they say it is, especially since I got a version that has been patched, even if it still has a lot of bugs. In fact, this still has more bugs in it than the PC port of Tales of Symphonia that was released a few months ago by Namco Bandai as well. For those who are unfamiliar with Star Trek, it is set several centuries in the future. Humanity has finally evolved, they found peace and enlightenment. Those who still crave excitement and adventure can enlist in Starfleet and set off into space, the final frontier. Because we have evolved, humans are now peaceful, like our heroes Kirk and Spock here, who will always believe in negotiations and only resort to violence as the last resort. Unless they are fighting against monsters that look like large freaky alligators, then it's open season to kill as many of them as possible. Can't replicate me an alligator skin backpack, so these things will have to do. Alright, first the game's plot, and then I will explain my rant. This game's story takes place between the original Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. After the events of the first Star Trek movie where Vulcan got destroyed, the Vulcans have set up a new planet to repopulate thanks to the older version of Spock. They begin to work on a new uber invention called the Helios device to help them rebuild their culture. However, that device starts to act up and the neighboring space station calls out for help. Kirk and Spock receive that call and go to investigate. They quickly find out that the Helios device opens up wormholes, and one of them leads to the Gorn homeworld, and now they want to come through and conquer everything. Now, in the original Star Trek episode, the Gorn were a bunch of aliens that wiped out a Federation colony. Kirk pursued them a bit hot-headedly. Both species ran afoul of another superior alien species who didn't want their schoolyard fight in their territory, so they set up an arena for them to fight in. During the fight, Kirk realized the Gorn may have acted aggressively on the Federation, but they did set up their colony on their property, and they had a right to consider them a threat. Once Kirk beat the Gorn, he spared it, and the aliens let the species go. Here in this story, the Gorn are just a bunch of aliens who want to conquer everything. So much for cultural understanding. These things are here just to shoot and make handbags out of. While this game fails to have any of Star Trek's philosophy, the overall story is still entertaining, basically because this game's story is really good at having Kirk and Spock banter back and forth. The two know that they balance each other's personalities, quirks, but they're not afraid to mention them or to even poke fun of them occasionally, and you get some really great banter and character setup for this.
I do not think this station is salvageable, Captain. Oh, you think so?
There are plenty of better scenes that even point out more what I'm talking about in the cutscenes. Unfortunately, when it comes to these action shooter games, for some reason my editor takes the sound and screws it all up, and it's always out of sync. So that's kind of the best clip I can provide. Please accept my apologies on that. Now, I didn't find anyone really playing this game online. I played a few minutes with someone I could find online, but there weren't a lot of people playing this. So I'm not really good at certain aspects of this online game, and for that I'm sorry. But the single-player gameplay is definitely a mixed bag. This game is designed to be a co-op third-person shooter. Although there isn't much aspects of co-ops like puzzle solving or inventory sharing or anything like that. You usually want to have a human friend around because your AI partner is completely crappy. While they usually don't get killed in battle except either by turrets or whenever they venture out in the open to save your backside because you fell down, they don't go out and hunt Gorn much either. They're basically just a distraction for the enemy at best and are usually just there, which is unfortunate because the game does seem to be made with two people playing at the same time in mind. There are times where you're just confronted with a lot of enemies, and it would be helpful if you had a friend or comrade around to assist you, and unfortunately the AI does not do a good job in doing that. As for your weapons, you have your standard Starfleet phaser on you at all times. It's weak, but it has unlimited ammo, but it can overheat if it's fired too much. It has a kill shot, which ironically takes less energy than a stun shot that overheats your phaser real fast, like 2 stun shots, and you gotta wait for that baby to cool down a little bit. And if you manage to successfully stun an enemy, it will mean either Kirk or Spock will have to go up and incapacitate the enemy before it's truly down. What you're seeing here is Spock doing what is called the Vulcan groin pinch on an enemy. Doesn't always cause them to fall unconscious, but it is guaranteed to make them go down in the fetal position while making them very pissed off at you. You'll get other secondary weapons that are just laying around on enemies or just sometimes on the floor that give you much more firepower but have low ammo counts, and you will have to constantly refill these at certain checkpoints. Yes, this game makes you have to manage your ammo, perhaps just a little bit too much, as it gets old sometimes running out of firepower in the middle of a firefight. It's not like the worst I've ever seen, but it's not good. Fortunately, the enemy AI isn't very bright. The enemies will do things like charge at you suicidally, and are oftentimes easy to kill because they don't use any real strategy. Occasionally you will see them hide behind items and try to duck for cover, but for the most part they're just easy to shoot and kill. Now, if you're wondering why the game has a stun on the phasers and has things like where you can hide enemy bodies, is because there's bonus objectives. Now, finding and stunning crew members that are infected with this Gorn virus is pretty easy, and those objectives I didn't find too hard. Your phaser just overheats if you miss too many times when you're trying to stun somebody. However, doing stealth in this game is freaking impossible because of the way the AI is set up. Either you can blast crazily and not get caught, or your shoe squeaks accidentally and every Gorn is on you. And I found these very frustrating. And if you're wondering if the EXP is worth getting, not really. Most of the stuff that I found that you can get is pretty much pointless. It would have been nice if some of these level ups would have actually done something, but for the most part, they're unfortunately pointless. As for the stages themselves, they're excellently well done set pieces. However, some of them are a lot longer than others. For example, being aboard the space station will take 2 or 3 hours to complete, while the next stage will be over in like 15 minutes. But basically each stage has you pretty much doing the same thing, blasting through Gorn and their robots. But you'll also be doing some simple puzzles and mini games in order to open doors. And if you ever do get lost in these somewhat linear stages, your tricorder will always point the way to the next checkpoint. But they do have a few fun extra scenes and little moments outside of just normal Gorn killing. For example, a scene where Kirk and Spock have to step outside in altered gravity and use teleport guns to move around is extremely fun. And then doing a boxing match against each other in the Gorn arena is a very cool moment. The only outside activity I didn't find enjoyable was to do the Starship turret section. Yes, the only time you take control of the Enterprise is during this on-rail turret section. I really didn't get the idea of how to lock on and blast my opponents, and you also have to time raising and lowering your shields in order to avoid taking damage. For some reason, I did manage to get past this part on my first try. However, if I did not watch Angry Joe's review and know that I had to hit the shield button at the right time, I don't think I would have even gotten past it, because there is no real instruction on how to do this stage, and it's kind of frustrating for an on-rails turret section. However, if there is one part where this game royally ticks me off, is when it decides that it can be a freaking Prince of Persia platformer. Third-person shooters and Prince of Persia platformers don't go well together. When I have to click and hold the analog stick in order to run, and half the time it does not respond, causing me to fall to my death, these areas can be extremely frustrating, and they're not needed. If you're a third-person shooter, be a third-person shooter. Don't throw in elements that do not match. This is the worst parts of the game, is when you have to do these sections. Fortunately, they're very limited and don't come up very often, but when they do, prepare for some real frustration. Graphically, this game is a mixed bag. On the one hand, you got a lot of effort going into things like the character models and the background sets. And then on the other hand, you also have a buggy mess. Let's take a look at the good side first. The Kirk and Spock character designs look just like the actors that portray them in the movie. They even got details like the hair right. So obviously a lot of effort went into their character designs, and the background and the set pieces for the most part are really good. They look very much like the Enterprise from the Abrams movies, and when you go on to an alien world, kind of like a modern day interpretation of the 1960s set piece. They look gorgeous. And the Gorn, for the most part, are alien enough to be scary, considering how they're cannon fodder now. However, when you bump into these graphical bugs, it kind of shows that the game was incomplete. For example, one of the most common bugs you'll encounter is if you stand too close to each other, you start to change in size. Captain, I told you not to eat those magic shrooms on the last planet we visit. Spock, you were the one who ate those mushrooms. Then, Captain, logically I must consider the fact that right now I am very wasted. Some of the other bugs will cause you to kind of just shift right through each other. And whenever you encounter one of these bugs, it really does take you out of the experience. Which is such a shame. It did look like the developers were originally shooting for a very high experience. Like this would be you experiencing the world of Star Trek. Unfortunately, this game just feels very incomplete. This game should have been held off a few months after the release of Star Trek Into Darkness rather than trying to be pushed out before it. Because of this, these graphical bugs really do wreck the experience. It's kind of a shame that my Adobe Premiere Elements 12 video editor likes to screw around with my sound when it comes to shooters or brawlers. For some reason, the repetitive sound effects in those games must screw it up. But whatever the reason, my audio track is completely screwed up on all my video clips, so I won't be able to play you any of it. But know that all the actors from the movie return to do the voices in the game, and it does lead to a very authentic experience when it comes to cutscenes, story scenes. As I already said before, a lot of Kirk and Spock's banter is hilarious, and the two characters have a lot of chemistry together, as do all the side characters that pop up in this game. The music is also really excellent. I have no beef with the audio. It really does pull you into the experience. I give this game a 2 out of 5. Don't get me wrong, it's not the worst game I've ever played. And if you're a Star Trek fan and can find it for like $5 or $10, it might be worth picking up. Unfortunately, it suffers from the curse that a lot of movie license games suffer from. It's got to be out in time for the movie, regardless if the game is done or not. I really wish that publishers would go back and take a look at GoldenEye for the N64. That game was delayed several times and came out more closer to the next Bond movie after it than it was to the Bond movie it was based on. But Rare, the developers, wanted to make a unique James Bond experience and to make it a good one. What we got was considered the best game for the N64 on a lot of lists and is oftentimes on lists of best games of all times. Because it's that good a game, because Rare took their time and made a great experience. While I don't think Star Trek could ever be as good as GoldenEye, it could have been a really great Trek experience. Even if it didn't have any Trek's philosophy, it still would have been a good action shooter. Instead, had to be pushed out before Star Trek Into Darkness and then heavily patched so we can at least get something playable. And the whole thing turns out to be a mess, and that is the biggest shame of this game, is that it could have been really good. Anyways, this is Tommy the Keyblade Master, thanking you for watching. If you want more of my reviews, feel free to click subscribe. I would love to have you as a member of my community. In the meantime, I just realized I reviewed a Star Trek game wearing a red shirt and nothing bad happened to me. The red shirt curses, bro.